I'll start with just handing over to Fernanda, who will start the introduction of the webinar.
Welcome, everyone. It's a really great pleasure to be here with all of you today. And in today's session, we are going to deep dive into generative AI for boards. My name is Fernanda Torre, and I'm the operations director here at Boards Impact Forum, and I'm also a board director. Just to give you a bit of an overview over what will happen today, these are our guests. So me myself will be presenting a bit. We have Liselotte Engstam, that is the chair of Boards Impact Forum, today using her research hat on a research project we've done together. Then we are very, very proud to have Mats Agervi, who is the CEO of Combient. So Combient, for those of you who aren't from the Nordics, it's this really cool cross-industry collaboration representing 38 of the largest industries here in the Nordics, working exactly within digitalization, etc., and innovation. And then we're also very, very proud to have Mats Magnusson, that is the vice head of one of the schools in KTH, that's the engineering school here in Stockholm, and he's a professor in product innovation technology. Thank you so much for being here. If we look a bit into the agenda for today, we are going to start with some kind of food for thought, with some presentations. And after these presentations, we are going to have a poll and a discussion. So we are going to put you into breakout rooms. And this is really a bit the exciting moment because it's when you can start interacting with each other. We wrap up with the panel and kind of conclusion, next steps, what's going to happen next, and if you want to know more about our activities. So let's get started then. Use the chat. Go ahead, introduce yourselves, make comments, share references, make sure that you use the chat. And we are going to record this first part of the webinar, of course, not the breakout room, and it's going to be available later on for your information. Just to let you know who we are, for those of you who are attending for the first time, Boards Impact Forum is the chapter for the Nordic countries from the Climate Governance Initiative from the World Economic Forum. So what we do is that we are really working with the broader sustainability agenda, and we are kind of coupling sustainability and AI, kind of seeing it from a disruption perspective. And we are partners with the main networks here in the Nordics. So we are reaching 5 countries, and through our network, also over 10,000 board directors. So thank you so much for to our partner organizations. So let's start about kind of where is our starting point, let's put it that way, when it comes to generative AI. So we really use the 8 principles from the World Economic Forum governance principles as our kind of guiding lights in most of our activities. These principles are around climate, but we find it very, very useful also around AI. So what we have done is that we've taken these principles and made a version when it comes, okay, what are the governance principles when we are talking about AI? And as you can see there, the starting point, one of the main aspects is really the board's role. So the accountability, the subject command, and the board structure. So let me tell you, if you move, change slide, Liselotte, let me tell you a little bit about the other element that is where we ground ourselves. So we have on one side the principles from the World Economic Forum, and on the other side we have this very cool research. So a few years back, Liselotte, our chair, Robin Teigland, that is a professor at Chalmers, and myself, we sat on a path to explore what is governing AI for boards. We've started this a few years back. So in 2020, we published a book, AI Leadership for Boards, The Future of Corporate Governance. And side note here, we're actually working, we're very happy, we're collaborating with Internetstiftelsen here in Sweden to update the book. So stay tuned, we're going to have a new version coming up soon. But what we found with this research is really that you have to balance both the supervision and the guidance. So there's a lot of focus quite often when it comes to the supervision. But if you don't guide the development of AI within an organization, you don't really have anything to supervise. And quite frankly, you'll be dead quite soon. So we have looked into the elements, if you can click, Liselotte, that are needed in order to create this balance. So again, always starting from the board's role, the accountability, the structure, the competence, and then really balancing between the guidance and the supervision. Within the guidance, we have been looking into the data strategy and management, the AI that is guiding innovation, and also the ecosystem when we are talking about working with AI. So these are the capabilities that boards should govern. When we are looking into the supervision, then we look into aspects like, if you can click, data, ethics, black box decision-making, cybersecurity. That is also, of course, a really, really big topic. And again, the ecosystem, but rather from a leadership perspective. So how can you supervise what is happening, not only in your organization, but then supervise what happens in the entire ecosystem. So this research and the principles are kind of the guiding elements for today's session, for the sessions that are coming. We have another session on the 29th, and also the AI program that we have created. If you change slides, I'm going to pass now to Liselotte to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. And maybe we should also say that in the AI research, we collaborated with Mats, Combient, and many of the Wallenberg companies in that research. And we're still collaborating with companies as well as revisiting. We kind of also say that the big change with generative AI is that it became a consumer tool. It became something that everybody can use, compared to previously when you really had to be expert in actually understanding and using it. And this is just a way to very quickly look at the disruption level that eventually will be there for many of the industries. And in this case, it's actually across the functions within a company. And if you think about that, the light blue is really things that can be fully automated. The medium blue is the one where it can be augmented with humans. You will see that it will have quite a profound impact on most of the different functions and technology functions and areas in our companies. Now, if we look at the industries, and we can see where it has already started to have an impact, we know that it's obviously in the technology sector. Also in the energy, I know there's several that is based in the energy and materials sectors here. And also in telecom, and of course, a lot of the services. We usually say that the more an industry is based on information, the more it's disruptive. But that will, of course, impact a lot in all areas. As we know, one of the most profound areas that we sometimes forget is in the area of medicine, health and medicine. And we basically are out of a COVID, which in many ways were really quickly saved with the invention of medicine for the COVID area. So we already have really significant contributions from AI. We usually say that it's important that we all start to think about Gen AI, not primarily as a tool, but as a paradigm shift. So that we need to help our leaders to both look at the obviously profit and revenue side, but actually look at how will it disrupt our industry and how will it disrupt our own business model. And if we look at how it's already have started, and this is the cost reduction impact that we can see on a lot of the functional areas again. And we can see that it has already had a lot of impact on obviously marketing, human resource, but a lot around the inventory, around operations, IT, of course, and it will continue to do that. The interesting thing is that it's already also had a lot of impact on our revenue side of schemes, which, of course, in the setup and the consumerability of the tool will be coming slightly later than the cost side that we can impact. But here's also why it's very important for boards to understand the impact on both sides, both the bottom and top line, so that we can help guide our companies to make sure that they take a balanced view of the opportunities. Now, coming back to the next area that we find very important, and we usually say that AI has a double impact on sustainability. So it does have its own partly negative impact, since the energy cost of operating AI is quite high at this stage, especially if you're using the large models and not the more tailored models. But there's also a lot of analysis now looking into how much it will impact sustainability in itself. And in this case, you can see that, of course, it's going to impact GDP, which increases the balance also for countries. But it's also already identified that in order to reduce our emissions, AI will have a very important area. And actually, even the thing that's under so much discussion, there's likely to be a net increase in jobs, not necessarily in the companies, in the structures where we have them today. UN has also, for those of you who are closer to the SDGs and actually use them as something you discuss around in your companies, UN has explored an uptake of 600 AI-enabled use cases towards the different SDGs. And it's just interesting to see where are they aligned. So a lot of them are aligned to the health that we talked about, the well-being, but also peace and justice, which is really on the agenda now and will be impacting a lot of our companies. And then we can see now, if you take an investment orientation of the same topic, it's actually very interesting to see where are the investments going compared to the SDGs. And of course, it goes into the health, also the climate, energy areas. But surprisingly, little so far is going into the quality of education, which is really up for a reap in terms of how it's going to be transformed. We thought it would be good to just take some case where some companies have done really transformational shifts. So we'll start with Klarna. Klarna is a fintech out of Sweden. It's a payment type of company. And they did a very structured collaboration and use of, in this case, OpenAI. And they managed to transform within less than a year 2/3 of the customer service, which is 2.3 million inquiries in the first month alone. And that is actually equivalent to the work of 700 agents. It's definitely an innovation that needed to happen around that. And I'm going to come back to the innovation part. There is, however, it was also, and they even brought it out themselves, a very big debate about replacing 700 agents, which they did. But in that, they made the service available in more countries, in more languages, and they were fostering a very inclusive environment, except for the 700 they had to release. Now, more than 87% in the company are using it. It took a very structural discussion and agreement from the board level and down to actually dare to take these quite dramatic decisions. And they are already then seeing the revenue, the customer satisfaction piece, but they're also looking to already this year make a $40 million profit improvement. And one of the things that wasn't clear to the public when they started on this journey was that one part of this is really reorganized into the sustainability area. So they have now built in and are continuing to build in motivation in their offerings for customers to always get sustainable alternatives when they're doing acquisitions. And they're also improved their transition towards net zero and investing in their own climate funds. Another example is Moderna, which most of you know as the one who came up with part of the medicine to the COVID area. They also went for a very focused transition. And they made the adoption actually 100% of their workforce. And they launched something they called 750 GPTs. GPTs are adjusted chatbots that is adjusted for something that you can do or use. Of course, they also add, besides the core areas, the speed up of research, they can provide much more of a broader structure to their areas. And the cultural shift was really a structured approach that they had to work with. They identified power users, they appointed champions, they had weekly Gen AI forums, and this also took a very structured initiatives, including the CEO, the board. They drove it also with incentive programs, and they had sponsored events where they included experts with their employees. They are launching 50 new products in 5 years, which they are already on the target to do, with only 6% of the previously needed workforce. So quite dramatic. And of course, we know some of the results. One of the areas they have also focused is to increase the clinical trial in terms of diversity, which is really interesting for women, all of the women in the call, because we weren't really targeted before, and also all of the people from the global south that wasn't really part of clinical trials earlier. And they are also balancing both the S and the E side. So the other thing we know from research, and this is that the leaders, the trailblazers on the boards that oversee companies and help drive the AI, it's already proving quite dramatic. So it's increased 2.6 times in the revenue growth. It's improving the EBIT, the market share, and not the least, the customer satisfaction. Now, there are for us as boards critical dilemmas. One of the dilemma we have is actually the competence on our own boards, but also with our leadership teams. There is a need to actually understand the usefulness, the opportunities in our companies and in our industries. The other balance is that when we have been disrupted before, we had a bit more chance to react. And here's an interesting dilemma for us to try to work with speed versus stability. Of course, there's a lot of ethical dilemmas introducing AI in the innovation of our companies or improvement of our companies that will take either a very big exposure to risk or a structure to actually grab the opportunity. And then there's also the short-term gain versus the long-term strategy. How quickly do we move into this area? Now, we're excited to have Mats comment much more from both the company, but also interesting, the ecosystem and the board level, of course. Mats is the CEO of Combient. He's also a NED in several companies, and he's a chairman or even of AI companies. He has a background from Ericsson, and he's used to very fast growth, we can say. Warm welcome, Mats.
Thank you, Liselotte, and good morning to everyone here. I guess a lot of you have the same situation like me, that it's the first week after a couple of weeks of holidays, so you feel a little bit rusty. But I know that some of you has it worse than I do, because it's in the middle of the night for some of you. So great to meet you all, and thank you for being with us here today. I was going to cover a couple of things today. One is a little bit about how to work in ecosystems and collaboration, and thereby talking about the special setup we have, which we call Combient. But I will also talk a little bit about Gen AI and what I feel should be the focus of you in the boards, and then follow up with a couple of use cases as well. But I mean, we live in exciting times, but we live also in very challenging times. We have global tensions growing around us, with war going on in East Europe, but also down in the Middle East, and with rather big tensions in Asia. We have a competition between US and China, both when it comes to world economy leadership, but more important maybe about being the technology leader in the world. And on top of that, we have the global warming challenge and an exponential digital technology development, which is creating a new revolution. So for us incumbent companies, we live in challenging times. And how do you manage this? Well, one way of doing it is how we do in Combient. There a couple of large Nordic enterprises believe that collaboration is a perfect tool to support their transformation and give their employees an opportunity to learn together, develop things together, and drive innovation together. Today, Combient, which was created 10 years ago, has 38 large enterprises, which together represents about 1.4 million employees and a joint turnover of more than 270 billion in revenue. The Combient setup is a little bit unique because it builds on, first of all, that it's a network and that we don't have any profit focus at all. So everything we do is to help and support the companies in the network to create value in their own operation. The other thing which is a little bit unique with this is also that none of those companies are competing. And that's a very important thing for us because we want to create the best possible climate for collaboration and thereby help us to be able to share and do things together. So actually every time a company would like to become a member, all of the existing one has to approve them, otherwise we'll not be able to join. Another thing which is important as well here is that behind those companies you find a number of the most influential business families in the Nordics. And actually the creation of Combient was done together with the Wallenberg family. And I saw that I have Viveka here in the audience as well, who have followed us since the start 10 years ago. But this has been expanded and you find families like Kamprad behind the IKEA. In Finland, you have a Herlin family, and it can continue so, which is also both involved in the networking we do, but maybe most important are the one which is pushing for the change and the focus to future-proof their business for the future. If we talk a little bit about AI, that has been with us since we started. It was the core of digitalization 10 years ago. But of course, the launch by OpenAI with its ChatGPT in the end of 2022 sparked a number of activities for us in the network to quickly understand what it means and start to turn it into something which could create business value for us. And from a network perspective, that meant that we started the year 2023 by having Jens and Wang with us here for a couple of days to help our leaders, but also the people in the organizations to understand what this was and how they could utilize it in a good way. And this was then followed by, I think, about 17 different conferences and events to spread the knowledge about it, training for boards, training for specialists in boot camps, putting together LLM sandboxes where you could test your bespoke applications, but also wider models where we were putting out trainings for the people and employees in the organization in partnership, for example, with MIT and IMD, but also that besides putting up partnership with McKinsey and NVIDIA and so on to build this knowledge ecosystem, we also actively looked into what existed around the partnership, the startup in terms of partnership and other things around that. So we scanned the market very early and looked into, I think, more than 2,000 Gen AI startups to see who were the one who actually had innovation that could help us to drive our business in a better way. And based on that, we picked 30 of them from the whole of the world coming in here to help us to understand where we were. So for us, of course, Gen AI has been an interesting topic and high on the agenda of all the companies we have. And I think everyone has been looking around to find the perfect use case. And it's not been so easy because a lot of this has been about automation. And I think the true value will come when we are coming into the product innovation part. But what have we learned? What could I share with you that I would like you to take with you to your boards? We can change to the next picture. Well, first of all, I mean, Gen AI is extremely exciting, right? I mean, if we look back to the Industrial Revolution, it was the time when the blue-collar people got supernatural strength that they could use in their work, which was the start of the Industrial Revolution. And now blue-collar people has access to superintelligence, which is beyond anything which we have had before. So when you think about here, we are talking about a major change and disruption in the society. But if you think about our business models and what we do today, a lot of those are more or less the same as they were 30 years, 40 years. We are working in the same way. So this is, as I feel it, when we start to talk about it, the starting point for changing processes and models and business model for all of us. We focus this year on 3 things, which I would like you to take with you. One is the AI Take 2, and I will explain that a little bit more later on. We talk about security and trust because it's so very much linked into this, and of course, compliance. But in the middle of all of this, it's still about data, which is the foundation for working with AI, but also the foundation for building new ecosystem and digital platforms, which is creating the new business models. We say AI Take 2 by 2 reasons. And first of all, it is that with Gen AI, we now see the next big leap going on in the AI space. And you can see the enormous amounts which is now spent by OpenAI, by Microsoft and Google and the big players to become the leader in this area. So I'm sure we will see a very rapid development within the coming years where we are going away from the assistants we have today to actually getting what you could call agents which both can analyze and understand how to break down a task in different objectives, and then in the end also close them. And then after that, hopefully we will also see autonomous generative AI systems, which can take on much, much bigger complex problems and tasks than what we have seen today. And on top of that also, we expect to see the quantum computing coming out within maybe 5 to 6 years from now, which will take AI to the next level again. So the coming 10 years is extremely exciting, and I urge everyone to closely follow the technology development. On the other hand, the other side of AI Take 2 is that a lot of companies have spent money and resources on experimenting with this, but not so many has really got the big value out of AI yet. If you take Accenture, and they are just one example, they say that it's only about 14% who have seen superior revenue growth thanks to AI, and that still so many as 63% is just testing the waters, doing experiments and testing things. So we are still far away, if we talk about the incumbent players, to get the value out of AI. And the question is, of course, why and what do we do about it? Because coming back to AI Take 2, I feel personally that if we are not able to do it now in our companies, we are gone, because the history shows, and I'm sure that that will be repeated with generative AI, that the leaders is creating a dominance and are taking an unproportional big stake of the market share and the profit. And the laggers are just shrinking when it comes to their ability to compete. What is the problem? Why are companies not more successful? Well, I think it is because even if technology is the enabler for it, the transformation is not about technology, it is about changing the way we are working. And I think it's extremely important that we start to talk about what is the objectives and what are the strategy, and not only work with use cases. We need more of the business to be involved and not treat it as an isolated island for the IT department or the digital department. It must be a part of what we do from a business perspective. And when you talk about it from a strategy perspective, one way at looking at it when it comes to generative AI is to select between 3 rules. It's about being the taker, which means more or less that you're taking the tools which you already get from Microsoft or SAP and implement them in your organization to create automation and create efficiency and help your employees to be more efficient. The other one is to become a shaper. And as a shaper, you're starting to use your own data and other things together with tools from the outside and partners to build new offerings and models, which is creating revenue. And the third area is to become a maker. And a maker means that you are building your own AI tools, you have maybe your own LLM models, and are thereby becoming an AI player in 100%. I think every company needs to select one of those 3 strategies because it creates value for all of them. Regardless if you're a taker or a maker, you're creating a business impact. And if you think about the automation opportunity, McKinsey have been talking about that it's maybe as big as $120 billion US. And this is something which you will have to do, because we will change the way we work. So if you do not do it, you will lose out on your competition, right? But at the same time, of course, it's maybe not creating a situation where you differ from your competitors long term, and thereby it becomes very important to get into the product and business innovation area. And if you talk about that area, McKinsey also expected that to be as big as 120 billion by 2030, and then continue to grow by about 30 to 40% per year. But to be able to do that, I feel personally that you need to have two pillars in your company to be able to take out the advantage of it. One is to have proprietary data, which makes what you do to something unique, which no one else can copy. And the other one is also that you have a business where you can combine Gen AI with more traditional models like ML, where you can look into pattern recognition and other things and create more unique data for you. But together with that, you will be able to create a unique value for your customer and run the extreme customization, which is the heart of AI. From an organizational perspective, there is many areas which needs to come up here to make a successful transformation. And it starts with leadership, of course. It's about competence. It is about your infrastructure and be able to integrate that with new technology. And then in the end, it's about building a new culture with new processes and new ways of working. But if you talk about AI, you also have to talk about security and trust. Because in the end, if you can't trust your data, there is no use of running AI. And what we see happening now in the world is, of course, that AI has also been a very efficient way for hackers and others to attack your company, because they also on the dark web is using generative AI and LLM models to create their assistants to hack you as a company. And when we are coming into the future, we know that quantum computing is, of course, something which is super good for AI, but is also something which is going to help people to crack all the encryption that you have out there. So you also read already now to think about what data is so sensitive for you that 5 to 6 years from now, you do not want anyone else to be able to crack it and open it up. Here, I would advise you to think about data as the most valuable thing you have, and work with zero trust models to ensure that you have full track on where the data comes from, who accesses it, and who is doing what with it, and who has been doing things with it to the future. So this identity control will be extremely important for you. The other area you also need to put time on is compliance. And I mean, with AI now, politicians are starting to look into how to regulate this. But genie is out of the bottle, and I don't want to say if it is the solution on all the problems we have, because it can help us, for example, like Liselotte said, when it comes to working with global warming and sustainability. But at the same time, of course, it could also be a threat against humankind. But regardless of this, we as companies need, of course, to understand how it is impacting our businesses, but also help it to steer what investments we are going to make into the future. And it is starting to be pretty complex. I mean, we are looking into this together in our network. And I think over the coming years, we have more than 30 regulations, which in different ways are impacting our companies. And from a generative AI perspective, maybe the biggest one right now for us is, of course, the EU AI Act and the EU Data Act. And when it comes to the EU AI Act, that's a risk-based approach that we are using for AI models, which is going to be built, which is starting to come in place around 2026. And already today, we need to understand how it is impacting our business and how we ensure that we will be compliant. The other area which is big is, of course, the EU Data Act. And one thing I just want to highlight there is that, for example, if you have products which can be connected, you are going to be urged to be able to share the data which is generated by your product with your customers, as well as who is using that in your own companies. And third, to be able also to make it available for them to share with a third party. And this one will take in place just a year from now. So it's high time now to look into the compliance aspects to ensure that you also are protecting your investments. But finally, I mean, most important with all of those things when we talk about transformation is, of course, that it starts from the top and that the boards are having the competence by training the people you have there. And if you look at our network, for example, the Wallenberg family has been very clear to their boards that it's time to get trained now. It's time to learn, because this is a reality, and they expect their board members to understand Gen AI and AI as such. And we have, just for the last year, trained more than 200 board members in rather extensive trainings to help them to get up the competence levels. But it's also like this, that we need to get a better mix in the boards with people who are more native when it comes to AI and can complement the board. Because the board plays an extremely important role now when it comes to guiding the companies to the future, to challenge them, to make them to change, because transformation is hard and it needs to happen from the top. And I have one good example in our network from a company called Södra, which is in the pulp and pellets and wood industry, on how you can use it with the right support. Because they have used AI to implement and manage the whole supply chain, and thereby being able to optimize it. So from the forest to the different divisions, which is making pulp, who is making pellets, who is making wood products, they are optimizing how they best use the raw material from the forest to optimize their business. And it's totally AI driven. And the feedback from them is simply that this wouldn't have happened without the support from the board and the CEO. But now, when it's in place 3 years later on, it's generating big savings and business advantage for their business. When you talk to your companies, and you can jump to the next page, there are certain things that maybe you should ask for to be able to get the result of it. First of all, it is if it's business-led, right? And one simple question is, if you're working with AI, you should have financial objectives when it comes to digitalization and AI. But also a very clear focus on which domains you're prioritizing. Where do you start? Where are you focused? What do you want to achieve? Because we see too much of this of testing with different use cases today. The other thing is, of course, the leadership skill. Because if we want this to happen, we need to ensure that our top managers has a lot of knowledge about AI and how it can create opportunities for the companies. And if you do not have those, who can you recruit, and how can you increase the awareness among the existing ones? It's about changing the way of working, and you need to have a customer-centric ways of working throughout the organization. It starts with a customer, it starts with customization. So how do you get the business and the digital technology to work together? And how do you ensure that business is the one who owns the digital agenda and has both accountability and the drive to innovate? And finally, even if we talk about AI and Gen AI, in the bottom of all of this, it's about data, and it's about the value of data. So how are your company driving the data management and governance? And how are you ensuring that you can use your proprietary data to differentiate your products and services and offerings? So to summarize, we are in exciting times, as I said, but it's also times when we need to move, when we need to act. And this starts with us who sits in the boards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mats. Really enlightening. And I know that you have now actually started to support and collaborate with the the state-owned companies as well, trying to establish a similar type of network.
We do. Actually, as I said, I mean, this is a for non-profit type of network. And the way we have been working has been extensively successful, I would say, because we are working across the companies with different groups of people. For example, with legal peoples on AI to understand what it matters, with HR managers, but also, of course, with business leaders and tech people. And this has been spread. So right now we are supporting a network of companies with state ownership in Sweden to set up a similar network. So I'm actually an acting manager as well for that initiative until they can take it over themselves, because it should be their company, it should be their network. But I'm happy, of course, as a Swede, to get more of those kind of ecosystems, which can come together with ours to make an even bigger impact in our market.
Thank you so much, Mats. And now we will come back to you, but we will continue with Professor Magnusson, who is also both a professor, board member, and we have also collaborated in a lot of research, very focused on boards for the last 5+ years. So warm welcome, Mats.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon or whatever it is. Just as a note, I can say I just came back yesterday from the annual Academy of Management in Chicago. So for me, it's approximately 1 o'clock in the morning as well, at least for my body. And that was exciting. So a reflection from there, when I listened to the other Mats here, is the fundamental change that AI has on business. We were 10,000 participants at the conference. It's the world's biggest management conference. And approximately 1/3 of all sessions were on AI. And probably we are, of course, noting the disruption that AI is generating, because it's also hitting our industry, research, innovation, and education. What I will very briefly present here, in the interest of time, are some very overall findings from an ongoing research that I'm conducting together with Liselotte and my PhD student Henrik Forselius, who is also a former entrepreneur and board director. We are looking into board practices that can deal with disruption. We have, for the last 5-6 years, looked into the overall topic of how boards should act in terms of handling these uncertainties, the changes, the disruptions. How should boards be engaged in strategy and innovation? And this result will come out as a chapter in a book, which is on strategy and corporate governance in turbulent times. Just very briefly here, we often talk about disruptions. Disruptions can be of different types. And there are also very different interpretations of disruptions, especially if I compare what we have in daily conversations and what we see in research, where we try to define this more specifically. But it deals with a substantial change in our business. And it could be on the technology side, on the customer side, where suddenly we realize that the former way we did things is no longer good enough. And someone, often a newcomer, presents a radically new way, a radically new technology like AI, or a radically new business model, and that then becomes the new dominant. And as incumbents, we are then often left behind. However, we wanted to look into that in more detail, so we explored different types, at least what we thought were different types of disruptions, and we saw directly that there are some disruptions that happen very rapidly, suddenly, like the COVID pandemic, the war in Ukraine, also the later war in Middle East. And there are some that are more sneaking up on you, like sustainability and AI, that are actually for a very long period something that we are aware of, but we are not necessarily acting upon these. And schematically, we can see this, that for any kind of these phenomena, initially there is a lot of uncertainty. And over time, that uncertainty is reduced with new information and knowledge. And of course, there is also the other part that if we act too late, the risk for us will be very big. And there is some kind of tipping point here where most companies then realize that, okay, this will probably happen, or it will probably happen in a certain way. Now we need to act. Probably this is a simplistic picture because these diagram should probably be exponential. The risk increases much more over time, and also uncertainty initially is very high, and then it is radically reduced. So we looked into this, and if I should say one and the most important finding, it is that boards that deal with uncertainty in a proactive manner, they have proactive behaviors, they are more successful. They show higher performance than the ones who actually wait and see. So if I should give you one single message, is your board needs to look into how it can become more proactive. We can take the next slide. As I said, this is a research we have done that is focusing on, based on workshops, on interviews, very many interviews, and on surveys. And we try then to identify, apart from seeing these big patterns, who are more successful or less successful, what can we do then as boards? And one thing that we can do, and we have known that for a very long time, is to actually look into the uncertainty that very few companies actually use scenarios in a structured way. There is also plenty of confusion in the area of scenarios, because just like disruption, it's a concept that has many meanings. Many companies talk about their own different scenarios, which basically are different ways forward, different strategies. But in order to deal with the uncertainty, we need to explore this from more of an external perspective, to understand what can happen, what are the different possible futures, and how will our strategy be able to cope with those different futures. How robust are our strategies? So another implication here is to make you think about how, if you use scenarios, and what type of scenarios you're using. A problem here that we see is also that boards of directors often rely extensively on management for their input to strategy decisions. This makes sense because management often knows the business. They should know it very well. But that actually hides one of the issues, because one of the issues is, of course, that they are focused. And we know from research in psychology, actually 70 years back, the concept of cognitive fixation. The more we work with something, the more likely we are to focus on problems and solutions based on that specific thing. And we miss things in our periphery. And disruptions often come from the periphery. They are not part of our daily business until they become completely obvious to us. The board here has an advantage, because if we have a board composed of people who both know a little about the business, of course, they are set to govern, but also knowledge from completely different fields, like AI experts, or from completely different industries, they are less likely to be so biased and focus on the present and the present problems and the present solutions, but could also consider completely different scenarios for the future. So we see it as very important that the boards actually use strategic external input and run workshops for the board only, to avoid being overly biased by the present business. And in this way, they can bring in a more long-term perspective on strategy and innovation in their overall materiality and risk assessments. We can move on to the next one. Now, this is about understanding what changes are coming, to sense these or perceive these at an early stage enough to actually observe weak signals so that we are able to act upon them. But if we look at this, we see that in the practices that companies have, there are fundamental changes to the way we perceive strategy. And I think most of us feel that the way we did this was more on an annual basis. We set the strategy and we follow it up. In today's world, that is not fast enough. We need to actually follow up our strategy formulation and implementation and progress at every board meeting. And in order then not to only do this, we have to focus on the strategy bottlenecks, the things that have extremely high relevance for our capacity to stay competitive. And we have to ask ourselves on a monthly basis, or perhaps even more, is our strategic direction still valid, or do we need to change? Of course, also changing direction is costly. So this is really about striking the right balance between change and stability. And in order to be able to have this ongoing understanding of strategy, we also need more interaction between board members and management. So when it comes to the integration part, we see completely new ways of working with the interface between the board of directors and the management team, and also with experts. Here we need much more interaction, as different from what I said before when it's about observing and perceiving these new challenges. We need actually to have a lot of shared understanding here in order to be able to revise and rapidly react upon new signals. A final observation here is, of course, the more we focus on trying to deal with uncertainty, the more we also have to accept that everything we do will not result in an intended output. We must accept that a lot of the things we do, we will actually find out that are not the right things to do. We have to promote a view of our work that basically is about learning, and failures are learnings. I prefer the term experimentation, because that means that we don't really know exactly what outcome we want. But failure should not just be seen as costs, it's about learning. And if there's something that is triggered by AI, it is, of course, that the speed of learning will be exponentially changing. We will learn so fast. And if we will not be able to make that transition and learn very rapidly, we will be left behind. And this also means that one way we need to think about this when we look at the overall strategy and the allocation of resources is, of course, that we need to spend money on finding out and digging into the uncertainty. And all of that will not be resulting. We should have, as I think Mats already pointed out, clear ideas where we should spend our money, because some of this will actually be necessary to do. And if we're only focusing on the present too much in our traditional budgets, we will miss out this, and we will not act on time on these new disruptions and threats. We've used a little more time than expected. Yes, I will stop here, but look forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much, Magnus. And it's certainly we live in interesting times, maybe we should say that. Now it's finally time for all of you to give your point of view. In your boards, which dilemma do you feel is posing the most challenge? Is it on the competency base of the boards and the leaders? Is it low? Is it with too few? Or is it this agility versus stability dilemma? Is it the short-term gain versus the long-term strategic? Where do you feel, or the ethical part? And you can just choose one. So let's see what you are considering being the challenge in terms of your boards. So it will be different. It's just good to see when you get into the discussion shortly, where you will find the challenge right now. Okay, so I will let you have 2 more seconds to fill it in, and then I will end it and share it back. Okay, we will continue with that, and we thought it was important to let all of the speakers actually get a bit of data, as this is the first series also for the program. But we are making sure that everybody can continue to discuss also on the platform. So I think we only have 5 minutes left, and I think we'll switch the order a bit. So Fernanda, I think if you can take just the last couple of shares, and if we have any time left, we'll use that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to be efficient here now. So, but just to explain a bit what is happening to make it very clear. So, this session and the next session on the 29th are introduction sessions to our program, Boards of Oversight of Responsible AI for Value Creation, that is run here at Boards Impact Forum. At the moment, we have already opened the learning platform. You have access there to the light blue AI Essentials for Boards. That module is already open in the platform. And moving forward, we are going to look in the strategic integration, guiding operational excellence in AI, sustainable AI, supervising robust AI governance, and elevating oversight. So it's 26 lessons. A really exciting part of our program is also two key elements that I think are really exciting. One of them is our AI boardroom simulator, where you can really simulate through the chatbot that we've created discussions as if you were in the boardroom. And the whole program is followed by a reflection guide. So each lesson you have to reflect over what does this mean to your own boards, to your own personal governance competence. And then you answer and you share in a survey that reflection guide. So we have a couple of sessions. Like I said, on the 29th, we have ecosystem and data for boards, and that session is also open. So you're all more than welcome. And then we have 3 more sessions that are closed to those participating in the program on innovation, sustainability and AI, risk and cybersecurity, and the final reflection where we share the reflection guides. And we have a very exciting game on boards and AI. So please join us. We have the registration deadline until the 9th of September, and you'll get a certification in the end. Our upcoming events, like I said, we have upcoming the AI data and ecosystems for boards. And we have some events that are exclusive for participants, but we have a few more events coming up. For those of you who are in the south of Sweden or in Denmark, close to Copenhagen, we will have an event together in Helsingborg, together with the city of Helsingborg in the Impact Innovation Week on the 17th of September. You can go to our website to register. And we want you to save the dates for a couple of events that we have coming up that we haven't really opened the registration yet. Please save the dates for 5 ideas from global diplomacy on the 26th of September, very exciting. On the 4th of October, trailblazing on sustainability reporting, really looking into the compliance aspects. On the 5th of November, we are going to talk about a very exciting book from Pia Heidemann-Cook, looking into embedding sustainability in organizations. And finally, on the 28th of November, we have the board pulse, as we have been having every year. It's a really good event together with INSEAD, BCG, and the Henriken Struggles. So please stay tuned, go to our website and register, and look into the AI program also if you want to learn more. We still have 1 minute for discussions.
Well,
Thank you so
we
much
also need to make
partners.
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for our partners, and a very, very big thank you to Mats Magnusson and Mats Agervi for sharing their knowledge here with us today.
Right. And we are, we can welcome everybody to stay on if you want to, but now we've also kind of packaged it up, and I know that we are going to lose a lot of people at the hour. So